Go ahead and re-adjourn the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners on Saturday, May 14th. We are in the middle of item number 25, which is Commission Regulation 1612, 2016 big game quotas for the 2016-17 season. We just completed before the break the black bear hunts, and so the next set of hunts will be antelope, starting with horns longer than years, any legal weapon hunt 2151, and I believe Mike Cox will be guiding us through this. So Mr. Cox, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone else. Yes, so let's start off with that resident rifle, horns longer than theirs, hunt 2151 hunt. We do have one alternate recommendation from Mineral County, which I would say, you want to speed it up? There you go.
Questions for Mr. Cox?
I didn't catch it, Mr. Cox. You said that the department would support the proposal presented
Yes.
by Mineral County.
Okay. Any questions on that particular hunt? Mike, let's take, well, let's just do it one at a time before I derail something. Okay, if there's no questions, is there any county advisory board input on hunt 2151 antelope horns longer than the ears? Bunch?
Glenn Butts, Mineral County. This is a real large area in Mineral County. It's a big piece of it. Matter of fact, we've only got one other, and that's 202. And for us to take a reduction in that area, I've got a herd of antelope that's on the west side of 205. I've got one that's on the south side of 205, a big herd. I've got a small herd running in 206. I got a big, pretty good sized herd running on the south side of 207. They're all over out there, and I just couldn't see a reason to take the reduction. And so I talked with the biologist. He didn't really have a problem with it, and to me it was hunter opportunity. We've got the animals. Let's take it back to what it was last year. Thank you.
Additional county advisory board input? Mr. Shea?
Sean Shea, Washington County. I'm just going to do all of ours at once because we approved all of the quotas, recommendations as written for all the animal hunts. So
okay, thank you. Comments? Tabs? Public comment in Las Vegas on antelope horns longer than the ears?
No comment in Las Vegas.
Okay, and Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Okay, and public comment in Reno? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for hunt 2151. Any discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resident antelope horns longer than the ears and illegal weapon hunt 2151 as presented by the department, with only a change in the quota from 20 to 25 for units 205 to 208.
Second.
We had a motion by Commissioner Johnson, a second by Commissioner Morey to approve hunt 2151 as presented by the department, with one change for unit 205 to 208. And that change would be going from 20 to an increase of 25. Is there any question or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 6-0 with our 3 absent members. Mike, let's do resident muzzleloader and archery together. So we'll be on pages 2 and 3.
So we'll entertain a motion for both the muzzleloader hunt, horns longer than ears, 2171, and horns longer than ears for archery hunt, 2161, both resident hunts.
I didn't see any alternate recommendations from county advisory boards, did you?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Any county advisory board inputs on those? Public comment in Las Vegas?
No comment in Las Vegas.
And Elko?
No comment in Elko.
And Reno? Okay, if not, we'll bring it back to the board, and if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion specific to hunts 2171 and 2161.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the hunts 2171 muzzleloader and archery hunt 2161 as presented by the department.
Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Wallace, a second by Commissioner McNinch to approve 2161 and 2171 as presented by the department. Is there any discussion or question on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 6-0, which will bring us to the bottom of page 3. Resident antelope, horn shorter than ears, any legal weapon hunt 2181.
We do have a couple different alternative recommendations.
Mike, what are those?
Elko County wants to drop the unit group that's primarily in Area 10 from 110 to 90 gill tags, horn shorter than ears, and Persian County wanted to drop a recommendation of 55 tags to 40.
Okay. Any initial thoughts on that?
They were both recommendations from our field biologists. There's not a huge difference in those numbers.
Okay. Any further questions for Mike? If not, County Advisory Board input. Mr. Krim, I had a feeling.
You have that feeling?
Joe Cram, Persian Cat. Well, in that unit 041 and 042, they had dropped the buck tags in there. So we didn't see a reason to raise the horn shorter than ears in that unit. So we'd just like to keep it at last year's quote of 40.
Okay.
Turn Winder Alpha Cab. On ours, they were saying that they decided what we wanted to drop it for was winter kill off. Some of the ranchers had spoke and thought that there was more winter kill off than what the biologist had said. So we elected to drop it down to 90 instead of 110.
Okay. Additional County Advisory Board input. Okay. Comment in Las Vegas on hunt 2181.
No comment in Las Vegas.
And Elko
No comment.
and Reno. Okay, seeing no comment, we'll bring it back to the commission for hunt 2181. If there's no further discussion or questions of staff, I would entertain a motion.
I guess just a quick question, Chairman Drew, to Mr. Cox. You said it wasn't a substantial reduction in those tag numbers in the units suggested by the cab. Does that mean the department does not have an objection to the alternate recommendations?
Well, and this is going to be for all of our recommendations, is that we looked at our information, our objectives, and we felt that these quotas would do whatever it needed to happen, whether it was we're higher than a buck ratio than we'd like to be in terms of statewide objectives, or a population. We think it should be lowered because of still impacts from the drought or depredation on alfalfa fields. So those are the, we're always giving and taking, but we wouldn't have come up with it unless we didn't feel that it wasn't a reasonable quota.
I appreciate that. I understand that. I just
So if you have to disagree with us, you can disagree with us.
no, that's not.
It's okay.
They're the experts, but don't worry. That's not that. But that wasn't my question. I mean, I understand how the department arrives at its recommendations. My question more is, does the department have an objection to the alternate recommendations that the cabs have made? I mean, do you say, wow, if I go from 55 to 40 in 041 and 042, that's going to create a problem?
He's not letting you off.
He's not, is he? Interject. So what I'm hearing is that the CAB actually wants us to reduce numbers, and the department's saying to go for it and take more. But we know the data says that the antelope populations are on the increase. So the CABs at their local level are saying that they think otherwise in those certain areas. Okay, so now I want to hear what you have to say. I think I've got it.
There is, and it was bared out earlier today, is wildlife management is not exact science. It's not physics. You don't have an exact formula to get you what volume is left after you take a gas off or whatever. But, so there is confidence intervals, there's variance around every estimate, whether it's a buck ratio collected from a helicopter or a population estimate collected or generated from a model. So could we be overestimating the herd slightly by 1%, 2%? Yes. Could we be underestimating a buck ratio? Certainly. So that gives you a little bit. I'm not going to, just like I have my entire career, there's no sword that I'm going to fall back on today. And I'll let you know if something is going to be so detrimental that it could backfire and we could have some catastrophic event. But I think as long as we're making an effort in some of these primary herds that do have limited habitat to continue to try to put pressure on the female segment, then we want that. But slight adjustments, 10% here and there, I don't know if it's going to have a major impact.
Understood.
You had to pick physics, that's why I'm up here twitching. Glad this is not physics. Not easy, but it's not physics.
But is it fair to say, like, if they want to adjust within the standard deviation of error, you're kind of okay if it's, and you would be more apt to say that can be problematic if you really felt it was problematic, but there's a standard of error anyway, and their deviation is not that grossly off
Yes.
from the standard itself.
Commissioner Johnson had a very good point. I was just unwilling to bend at the moment. I will acknowledge that, yes, we want to know, is it a reasonable decline? Is it a reasonable increase? And so I think we can say these are reasonable.
Hearing that, then I'm prepared to make a motion. Unless there's further discussion.
I don't believe so.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resident antelope corn shorter than years any legal weapon hunt 2181 as presented by the department with the following changes: that the quota in 041 and 042 be set at 40, and the quota in 101 to 104, 108, 109, and 144B be set at 90.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Johnston and a second by Commissioner Morai to approve Hunt 2181 as presented by the department with two changes: an increase or a decrease, in Unit 041, 042 from 55 to 40, and a decrease in Unit 101 to 104, 108, 109, 144B from 110 to 90. Is there any question or further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Which puts us on to page 4, non-resident antelope, horns longer than the ears. And Mike, let's take non-resident, any legal weapon, archery hunt. Let's take those together. So we're working off page 4, hunt 2251, and page 5, hunt 2261.
Yeah, and then just to make a comment, those 5 extra tags we added on the 2151 hunt, they don't bump the fraction up at all. So it would still be 10% if we made no change to the non-residents for that 2251, 205 to 208.
Okay. Mr. Bunch?
Glenn Bunch, Monroe County. We didn't have a problem with the reduction in this one. We just felt since we're able to acquire the increase for the resident, that we should do the other one with the non-resident. That's why we recommended to take it back what it was last year. Same thing, we got the other. Okay? Thank you.
Additional County Advisory Board input? Public comment in Las Vegas?
No comment in Las Vegas.
And Elko?
No comment.
And Reno? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. If there's no further discussion or question, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve Hunt 2251 as presented by the department with the following change to area 205 to 208 from 2 to 3. And I would also move to approve Archery Hunt 2261 as presented by the department.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Wallace, second by Commissioner Johnston to approve Hunt 2251 as presented by the department with one change to Unit 205 to 208 being an increase from 2 to 3, and Archery Hunt 2261 as presented by the department with no changes. Is there any question or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Which brings us to page 6, I believe. Resident Nelson Desert Bighorn Sheep, any ram, any legal weapon hunt, 3151. And it spills on to page 7. Mike?
Okay. All right, so for the resident, any ram, 3151 hunt for desert bighorn sheep, we did have alternative recommendations for a few units from Nye County, and tag reductions of 1 to 2 to 3 tags. I'll just tell you that we've been pretty consistent in those 3 units. They're looking at unit 211, which is the Silver Peaks. Excuse me, the
You're right.
yeah, Silver Peaks. The Lone Mountain 212 and the Monte Cristo's 213. And the average age, we consistently are above 6, 6.1, 6.2 for average age. It is a remnant herd that has small bases, and I'm not sure if trying to increase the average age is going to increase the score, but we're following what we think. We're following our statewide management plan in terms of the setting quotas at 8% of the total rams, not to exceed 50% of the mature rams, 6 years old.
Questions?
Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Hubbs?
Really quickly, in terms of the bighorn, what does your plan say in regard to those populations that carry that disease? I mean, do you modify those areas in terms of the quota set, or do you discount them having that disease or not having that disease?
Depends on what it does to the herd. So just because it has that pathogen, it depends on if we have effects on the adult females and males, and if it doesn't, then, well, we're going to do our best to account for the impacts to those herds in our estimate. So, yes, we do have Mycoplasma ovipneumoniae in all 3 of these herds. We do our surveys, and there could have been some mortality that occurred from that disease or in concert with that disease, but we may have adjusted the population model and the estimate. So we feel comfortable that the mature ram segment in that herd is accurate. Now, there could be something that comes in between now and October, and we've had that happen. And so we've kind of been under this unwritten rule that buyer beware. So today I can tell you we have taken into account predation, disease, other effects on those herds. And our recommendations today do reflect whatever information that we have to date. But if a disease comes in a new disease, a new strain between now and October wipes out half the herd, certainly all bets are off. And but today we feel comfortable that we've accounted for all the different mortality factors that could affect the mature rams that will be projected to be alive during the hunting season.
Mr. Wallace?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask you, Mike, real quick, has there been any other thoughts on, you've split up 212 and put an early and a late season. Are there any thoughts on doing that for 211 or 213? Because I don't necessarily have a problem with the quota number, but those areas, when you put that many tags in an area, a lot of people in one small.
Well, I know I continually ask our biologists who, at least on the front end of the hunt, are speaking to many of the hunters. Many of the hunters may not call after the hunt and give us their personal opinion of how the hunt was and if there was congestion, but they're trying to keep their ear to the ground.
Okay.
And if there was, we certainly want to try to accommodate that and use the model that we have for Lone Mountain. And certainly Lone Mountain is the smallest in terms of surface area.
Right.
They're stacked in pretty good on Weepaw Hills and Paymaster. But and you know, when we've, for example, the Muddy Mountains always comes up.
It's going to come up again.
There's got to be hunter congestion. You know, there's got to be, and I'm always saying, hey, Pat, in the southern region, what have you heard? What comments have you gotten back? So I do think we should always be open to those splits. And but I haven't. We haven't had any negative comments that I'm aware of. But certainly a lot of people, unlike today, they're bashful. They may not want to come up and tell us or share us on an email, but I haven't heard.
Okay. Additional questions? All right, I'm going to get on my muddy soapbox.
Before you do that, Chairman, I would like to state something that we're going to have to discuss for these herds that have U-hunts. So we have a similar issue with elk. When you're harvesting so many females, you get that imbalance of males to females. And we've discussed the need to look at, as we artificially increase the ram ratio compared to the number of ewes, because we're harvesting the ewes. Do we need to stay at a certain ram ratio? Do we look at, the total rams is going to increase. And if you were just to look at the 8% of the total rams, it's going to jump up. Now we have the other metric, which is not to exceed 50% of the mature rams. But one of the things we know is the 2 and 3 and 4-year-old rams are the ones that go on walkabouts primarily. Not saying that a 10-year-old ram's not going to go on a walkabout. He's got a resource somewhere else, and he might go into an adjacent mountain range. But the more of those young rams we have out there, the greater likelihood, and it's modeled, there's been people modeling this, that you're going to increase the probability of disease transmission. So that's just something that we're going to need to look at with having a lot of rams out there. Their ability to service the number of ewes, there's going to probably be some rams that may just take off and go on a walkabout. And if there's a herd nearby that is clean of the disease, that's a concern. It may not be this metapopulation, maybe some others. So
I guess that's my concern. I had the unique opportunity, and it's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to spend 20 days in the field or more in Unit 268. And I'm going to qualify this. I have the utmost respect for the area biologist, but I think we're falling victim to some of our own conservatism. When I look at the status book and it talks about 116 rams to 100 ewes to 42 lambs, okay, I understand we have a high ratio, but when I do the math, and God knows my math can be wrong, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 rams observed in the unit. And we've got somewhere around the neighborhood of 89 lambs observed in the unit. So if we assume a 50-50 ratio, we've got 45 ram lambs coming up. We have a unit where we have concern over resource allocations, meaning water in the summer and forage. And I understand that this year, and having seen it, is drastically different than years in the past. But I still look at 250 disease vectors running around in a unit where we have resource concerns to the point where we have a U-hunt. We're recommending that we drop the tag from 25, or the quota from 25 to 23. And I guess we could look at the social aspect of it and say we have a concern with hunter congestion, and maybe in 20% of that unit we have a hunter congestion issue. But in 20 days during the season, I ran into one other hunter. So if you get angry calls from people with hunter congestion issues in that particular unit, please direct them to me, and I can mark some places on the map that they can go and not see anyone. So I guess what I'm getting at is my concern is that I think we have a resource. I think we're probably well under what we could be issuing in terms of tags per the management plan and the guidelines. And we have a world-class opportunity. It is unparalleled, that hunt opportunity. It's just unbelievable. I can't even put it into words. That we're deferring because of conservatism in the face of some real management challenges, in my opinion. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I know Clark didn't recommend an increase. I know the biologist is recommending a 2-tag decrease. I'm just having a little issue putting it into common sense based on the opportunities we're foregoing for some of our sportsmen. That's all. Additional questions or comments?
I have one more question, Chairman Drew. Just in terms of if that population were to become virulently sick, and you were saying your approach is kind of a buyer beware approach, what does that really mean for the individuals who drew a tag? Does that mean they still get to go forward with the hunt and it is what it is? Or are you saying there is a potential that you would stop the hunt? I'm just unclear.
In the past, it's a new day, it's a new commission, but it was years and years ago that, and we've been through it with some rocky herds that experienced a disease event after we set the quota. But it was the flavor of the commission back then to let it ride and say, look, we're sorry. You can go out there and try to find a mature ram, but we're not going to stop the hunt. We're not going to give you your bonus points back. So, but that was then. I don't know. It's up to you to decide to have an emergency change in regulation that you have to go to the governor for. But that was what we've done in the past.
I think one of the dynamics too that has changed is there's an option to return your tag. So if you draw the tag and everything's looking good, and then the population completely crashes, you do have the option to return that tag. So I don't think that option was available with the Rocky situation.
It wasn't. You're right, and that does provide a huge out for the tag holder.
Additional questions or comments? Commissioner Johnston?
Quick question. I heard you correctly, Mr. Cox. When we got the alternative recommendations from Nye County, that their goal is ultimately to harvest more quality rams from those herds and those units, and they believe that reducing the quota is going to achieve that by increasing age and quality. If I heard you correctly, that reducing the tag numbers as proposed by Nye County may not be consistent with the objective they're trying to achieve.
For us in fulfilling our statewide management plans, metrics that we have for setting the tags, certainly you reduce harvest, you will have more older age rams, just like we do with elk and deer, and that's close to physics. Yes, you don't kill them, some of them will stay alive, everything being equal, but we're just following our those formulas that we have in the statewide plan.
Mike, could you reiterate to us, and I think a couple of us understand this, but what are the parameters in the statewide plan, just so we're all clear,
For
for ram
determining,
harvest?
for determining our tag recommendations.
Yep.
So in our population model, we have a model that generates estimates the age structure of each herd based on our survey, survival rates, and many of those herds we know how many they started with. So we're estimating the number of rams in each age class. And then the criteria in the management plan says that based on the population estimate, your tag recommendations should be based on 8% of the total rams that we estimate, yearling and older. So that would be the what we should be looking at to initially set the quota, but it should not exceed 50% of the 6 years old or older rams that we have estimated in the population. So we sum up in the model the number of rams that we estimate to be in the 6, 7, 8, all the way up to a model actually goes up to 13 years of age on rams. And if there happens to be, in this case, if we start to see a lot of, if we happen to have a hole in lamb recruitment years ago and we're missing a lot of those mature rams, we may not, the amount of tags could be lower because we don't have as many mature rams as we normally would with a given population estimate, because they didn't survive 6 years ago, so they're not going to be around now, and so that 50% could lower the tag quota recommendation.
And that 8% that you start with, that would be your recommended harvest or your recommended quota. I guess they're close for bighorn just because of the success, but
Yeah, we assume 100% success. We don't use the demand success because we only have a single weapon class in illegal weapons, so we don't try to use the demand and the success rate of each weapon with just a single hunt. So it's kind of a bracketed. Typically, 50% of the mature rams typically less than 8% of the total rams.
so despite my rant, we're actually pretty close to being within the guidelines as defined in the management plan for a unit like 268, even though we have a pile of rams.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I just opened up the model, and we probably could handle 3 or 4 more tags.
Okay. Additional questions? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh.
I just have a quick question of Mike. He was referencing the ewe hunts and the effect of the proportion of rams and kind of compared that to elk. One of the challenges we have with elk is we have population objectives. We also have a state elk plan that describes a range of bull ratios. Obviously, there's challenges in keeping those populations within those ratios. But the way that we're managing elk, we're monitoring those bull ratios. But with the ram quotas being driven by the absolute value of rams, independent of that ratio, it's a little bit different. And you made the statement that we would see more rams out there. Are you anticipating a density dependence response with having more rams in those populations, or what are you thinking the similarities or the comparison with setting an elk bull quota bull quota versus the ram quota or ewe quota?
Well, we don't have antler breakage, certainly on horns. We do have, but I do think when you have a unbalanced number of rams relative to the social structure and the breeding system that bighorn have, you're probably going to start to see some more pioneering and dispersal of those rams, and that's probably why we're seeing bulls in Area 10. We've got elk herds to the north of Area 10 and to the east of Area 10 that bulls are like, well, I can't compete during the rut. In fact, I'm getting my rear end beat up. So I'm gonna see if there's a suburb of cows somewhere that I can spread my genes. And could be the same thing with the rams. And that's probably our biggest concern is dispersal of rams from these metapopulations that we do have, mycoplasma, particular strain. They might even migrate or disperse out of that metapopulation to where we do have clean herds. And as we've shown, as I told you in March, even though a herd has been exposed to a certain strain, they may be doing very well today, but if you get a second strain, it doesn't give you immunity, and it's been shown west-wide. I just got back from a big conference, and the research is very clear that second, third strain of mycoplasma can have totally different impacts on a herd. So the concern is having these excessive number of rams relative to the base population of ewes, and having them not be able to participate in that rut year after year, and then having them seek out other ewe populations 30, 40, 50 plus miles away, and potentially sharing what I call their dirty laundry, their disease, to a herd that potentially is clean, and that we don't know what the impacts that might be.
Additional questions or discussion? All right, we'll open it up to County Advisory Board input on our Desert Bighorn sheep resident 2261 hunt. And actually, is there any reason, Mike, not to do the companion hunt at the same time?
Agreed.
Okay, so County Advisory Board input on resident and non-resident Desert Bighorn sheep.
Sean Shea, Washoe County. We went with all three of them, including the ewe hunt. We went with what the state approved. So.
Okay.
Paul Dixon, Clark County. Our CAB voted to take all of the recommendations, but I'd like to point out that 3 members of my CAB are also on the fraternity of the Desert Bighorn sheep, and they had discussions at the fraternity about these quotas, and they were all fine with the fraternity with the quotas. I can't represent the fraternity, but they represented on my CAB that there was no dissenting views on these things. Otherwise, I would have made recommendations back to the CAB. Okay, thank you.
Additional county advisory boards. And just to be clear, we'll do you next. We'll take the 2 companion ram hunts, and then we'll do you separate. Okay, public comment in Las Vegas?
No comment in Las Vegas.
No comment, no.
And Reno? Got at least one.
Bill Belding, Washoe County. Excuse me, I had a eye operation that's not going real well, and I can't see, so I'm kind of bumping into things. I'm not drunk. So. I concur with what Chairman Drew said. I've had some concerns in there. We've discussed these in the past, and in the Buddy 268. And, I think some important points that Mr. Cox brought up, I'm going to have to kind of disagree with what he said. Our age class, I'm not saying he didn't say this, or did say this, but our age classes in the Muddies have always been good in Rams. Have a good representation all the way through. Confirmed by the biologist down there that I talked to, Boston. We had a study that was conducted by the USGS, I believe, by Matt Jeffers before he worked for the department. Mike saying that these 2, 3, and 4-year-old rams are the ones that wander. I don't disagree with that. But the one that wanted the most in that study was a 9-year-old ram, if I remember right. And he was 9 years old, and he wanted the most. And when I hear these conflicting reports, some beliefs, some reports, I have to question that. And I just want to bring it to your point that we have that problem with older age class rams. And as far as the populations go, we're artificially increasing these ram populations in just about every unit in the state. Another unit that you're aware of, Jeremy and Chairman Drew, is 181. For many years now, we've been over 100 rams per 100 ewes. And I think there's some opportunity there that we should take if it's available. Of course, it's mycoplasma positive too, but as far as I know, and everybody tells me it's not taking effect on the herd. Matter of fact, we have more there this year, the highest count we've ever had. And I think if the opportunity is there, we should take it. I realize I like doing what the CAP does too, but if that opportunity is there, we should take it. Thank you.
Additional public comment, Reno? Desert Rams? Okay. If not, I'll bring it back to the board. I guess the one thing to point out, Mike, is we do have, is it 6 specialty tags? So between Heritage, PIW, Dream, and Silver State, I think there's 6. 2, 2, 1, and 1.
I think so, yeah.
So I guess I could understand that with the Muddies. I think last year it was closed. For all those specialty tags, it'll be open for all those specialty tags this year. So I mean, I get it from that standpoint, but I still think it's a little low, personal opinion.
I could be wrong, but Chairman Drew, I was just going to interject really quickly in regard to the dispersal and the age group. What I was hearing was that the male species are tending to disperse if they feel that they're not able to mate, or that may be the driving force versus their age, right? It's their mating opportunity and seeking a potential mate in another area. So whether it be a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old, it could. I think what we're looking at is their status and their ability to mate with the ewe, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're guessing. It could be resource availability, that they're seeking better resources. But if you were to take 100 rams and put collars on them, the majority of them are in the 2, 3, and 4-year-old age classes. And you'd have a greater percent of those moving around. We've documented plenty of old age rams moving around, but in that particular study, it was 1 ram. But I'm just saying that the majority of the rams that move most are the younger rams. I didn't say that the old rams never move, just the majority. And I think we think it is because of the inability for them to, being able to breathe. But it could be other reasons.
Additional questions? Commissioner McNinch?
Mr. Chairman. So, Mike, in 268, you made a comment. Is that where your reference was to probably handle a few more tags?
Yes. In reference to Commissioner Johnston, I don't think there would be a deleterious effect, or we would have a sword to fall on if we increase tags in 268.
How many?
Yeah, how many?
Well, now you're really putting me on the spot.
I am.
You brought it up.
You said you opened the model to support more.
Yeah,
so
yes,
more.
I was.
What did your model say?
What is that? This is like playing Magic 8 Ball, isn't it?
I heard 4.
Probably, 30 total. So if you were to look at residents and non-residents, right now we're at 27.
So if that number was at 26 on the resident, then that would probably be reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, and we know that there will be some of these specialty tags that will go in your muddies. And we've always been cognizant of some of these smaller herds, whether it's the Chihuahuas with California Bighorn or the bears. with deserts that if all of them or a high percentage of those 6 tags can go in there, we've actually probably given you a slightly lower recommendation for tags, and we've almost always been correct that those tag holders go in there. But being the muddies, having about 7 sheep, having solid ram ratios, as you point out, that I don't think there would be an effect that we could even measure if we had a few more tags, 3 or 4 more tags.
Yeah, and I guess the statement I would make, and kind of having my little monologue and my rant, that's kind of my personal view based on the fact that I got to spend a lot of time down there. And like I said, I have all the respect in the world for the area biologist. I think he understands that population a million times better than me based on, just having been able to have the opportunity to see it. So where I struggle with this is, my personal opinion. I don't necessarily want my personal opinion trumping the process, but I also think that we're probably being a little bit overly conservative, and in doing that, we're removing a really unique and what I would call once-in-a-lifetime opportunities from some of the folks who have worked very diligently to get those populations to where they are today in the face of a very uncertain future. And so I'm certainly not going to be able to make the motion, but I just want to make sure the commission understands that I don't think my personal viewpoints should trump either the local area biologists or process in the county advisory boards. I just want to point out that I think we're building in a lot of conservatism in the face of an uncertain future, and in the process of doing so, taking opportunity away from the very people who have worked hard to put it there. That's my concern.
I will state, we've had, and it's based on check-ins of the rams, frustration of some of the wilderness areas. The Muddy Peak wilderness, really tough to get into depending on the temperatures. And we'd love to see more hunters get in there. And I know Pat Cummings, he knows the pockets that we'd love to get hunters into, and it seems like year in, year out, we just can't get enough to go in where we do have large numbers of mature rams. And I don't know if that had anything to play into this, but
Confident that it did. Okay, additional questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve Nelson Bighorn Sheep Hunt 3151 as presented by the department with the following change of area 268 from 23 to 26. And I also move to approve at the same time Nelson Bighorn Sheep Hunt, any ram, any legal weapon, Hunt 3251 as presented by the department.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Wallace and a second by Commissioner McNinch to approve resident desert bighorn sheep ram hunt 3151 as presented by the department with one change, and that would be an increase of unit 268 from 23 to 26, and companion hunt 3251 for the non-residents with no change, and that would not incorporate the recommended changes by Nye County, and we would also be in opposition to keeping the status quo as recommended by Clark in 268, correct? Okay, discussion on the motion or question?
Just quick discussion, Chairman Drew. I'm going to support the motion, and I understand we're rejecting Nye County's recommendation here, but after hearing from Mr. Cox and talking about a roughly 40% decrease from 16 to 10 in Unit 213, I don't think the projected or the alternative recommendation from the CAB is going to fulfill their objective, what they would do, and hearing the numbers and explanation from the department, that's why I'm going to support this motion and not go along with the Nye County CAB.
Additional discussion or question on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0 with our 3 absent commissioners. So Mike, let's do page 7, resident desert, NEU, any legal weapon hunt, 3181.
And just to confirm back on the 3251, the non-resident, we are still at 10% of the total tags for non-resident.
Correct. I actually calculated that, and I think we were a touch high, so
We
that
were.
gets us a little closer.
Yeah. The Desert Bighorn U Hunt, 3181. We had no alternative recommendations from the advisory boards. And we do have a companion non-resident, 3281, for your consideration at the same time. And we ended up statewide, basically allowing a tag or season in each of those 4 units that we have the resident. And the tag quotas are 10%. So the non-resident quota is 15 U tags. The resident is 133. At 15 is 10% of the total.
Okay. And thank you for reminding me of the new companion hunts. So we'll take both the resident and non-resident U hunts for together. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any questions before we go out to public comment? County Advisory Board input on the U hunts? Public comment in Las Vegas on U-hunts?
No comment in Las Vegas.
And Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Okay, public comment in Reno on the U-hunts? 1.
Again, Mel Belding, Washoe County. I have to remain consistent. I've been against the U-Hunt since its adoption, and I'm still against it for many reasons, and I'll speak on behalf of California Bighorn Sheep also, but I think the sportsmen, wildlife viewers, the public is served much better if we trap and transplant these animals and not kill them. Thank you.
Additional public comment in Reno? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any further discussion or question? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve, excuse me, Nelson Bighorn Sheep, NEU, any legal weapon hunt, 3181, as presented, as well as Nelson Bighorn Sheep, NEU, any legal weapon hunt, 3281, non-resident, as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Wallace, a second by Commissioner Johnston to approve hunt 3181 and companion hunt 3281, non-resident desert U, as presented by the department. Is there any question or motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously 6-0. Which puts us on page 8. Resident California Bighorn Sheep, any legal weapon 8151, and companion hunt 8250.
Before
And let's do, because they're all on the same page, Mike, let's do the U as well.
Sure. So we have the ram hunts, resident, non-resident, 8151, 8181, and then the 8251, and then the U hunt for California Bighorn 8181. We did have a alternate recommendation from Lander on reducing the U tags from 10 to 5. And that is in the Sheep Creeks, which is unit 068. Just want to go back to the Muddies and the 3181 hunt. We do have confirmation that the state of Utah is fully prepared to receive bighorns from us this fall, up to 50 ewes and rams from the Muddies. to be transplanted, translocated to the state of Utah. So that definitely, we took that into account. We would have recommended a higher U quota in the muddies.
And that would occur after the season or before the season?
It'll occur after. In fact, we'll probably utilize some of the ewes that are harvested for our pre-capture disease surveillance that we've committed to internally. That something could happen. It could happen next week. It could take months. The previous data that we have was from October of 2015 in terms of their disease surveillance status. So we will go in again to sample some more of those animals, but those harvested ewes will also be a part of that disease surveillance.
Chairman Drew, I do have a question about the gentleman who came up and said he's against the ewe hunt because he would want them to be transplanted somewhere else. But I was thinking, how do we? I'm trying to disentangle why we're concerned about dispersal and the fear of spreading the mycoplasma, and then we're also transplanting ewes, you're saying, from the same area with the mycoplasma to Utah. Is that correct?
Yes. So let's talk about the muddies real quick. So
okay.
The muddies that we're going to use as source stock for the state of Utah currently is negative for mycoplasma, based on all the sampling we've done. And it's probably the greatest sampled, tested herd we have in the state. So, in fact, Utah was racking their brains to try to make sure that they can find a release site that is safe and has limited risk of disease transmission to other bighorn that have mycoplasma or domestic sheep or goats. Now, we did an experiment this last fall that involved a translocation of animals from the Gabbs Valley Range, Antelope Mountain, that we did detect mycoplasma in. We did our homework on two fronts. One was, did they have disease or not, and what strain it was. And we also looked at the population demographics for that herd, population size, land recruitment, and we have a series of internal protocols that we've developed and that we're going to try to refine with this new situation. And we are willing to move sheep with what we call like strain of mycoplasma from a herd that's been exposed to that like strain to an area that is either low density and that has animals within it that has the same strain, or there's almost no animals in there, but the adjacent herds that could easily come in contact with movement of those animals once they got transplanted, they also have to have the same strain of mycoplasma. And so we're monitoring that right now. It was a pretty safe bet, but we kind of are tipping our toe in the water on that, and we're going to monitor that. And if we don't see any impacts, then we may consider that elsewhere. But again, not being exposed to any mycoplasma in the past, we have no idea how a herd will respond to a new strain, or if it's been exposed to a current strain. Much of the work that's been currently done says that a second strain, which is what hit the rivers, the McCulloughs, the Spring Range, and the Eldorados last year, and it did have a deleterious effect. We think we may have lost up to 30% of the adults. And so we certainly don't want to be spreading certain different types of strains.
Mike, as it pertains to 068 and the Landry County recommendation, I know we have, and I don't know if we would even entertain looking at a transplant to the Montanas as soon. I'm assuming the answer is no, but has anything changed with the precipitation we've got, with our herd dynamics, California-wide, statewide, that would result in us wanting to reduce that? I mean, in reading the status book, it sounded like 10 was a pretty solid recommendation. So I don't know if you can speak to that, the recommendation to cut that in half by Lander or not, or share some, thoughts and ideas as to why we might want to reduce that.
Well, we certainly have got better moisture this year than last year or the last 3 years. But the resources are still not where we'd like them to be. There's been some overgrazing in that area. Our people have been working with the BLM and the permittees. But right now, and I guess in the foreseeable future, we don't think there's going to be a big enough change to allow that carrying capacity for the bighorn to allow them to grow, or we feel comfortable allowing them to be over what the eastern region, the field biologist had set as a population objective. We call it a sustainable management level of about 100 animals. And the estimate from our field biologist, Jeremy Drew, was still about 110.
Jeremy Lutz.
Jeremy Lutz. I was looking right at
you. We look similar. And that's a compliment to me and probably a knock on poor Jeremy Lutz. But.
Well, I'm glad you're so positive and share that. So anyway, we think that in the short term, we'd like to keep that population around 100 animals. 5 less would mean probably 2 to 3 less harvested ewes. I guess I'll let Tom Donham speak if that's something that he or Jeremy Lutz couldn't live with. But again, our recommendation, we felt comfortable that we would do what we think it would need to be done. But
Mr. Donham, you're welcome to add anything if you had something to add, but don't feel obligated if Mike covered it. Unless you want to pay me another compliment.
No, then I'll just not even go up. Not willing to do that.
You don't want to take that risk. All right. Any further questions at this point? Okay. County Advisory Board input on any of the California bighorn sheep hunts? Mr. Shea?
Sean Shea, Washington County. We approved as written for all of them, but we had some discussion on this. There was at least one board member did not like the one non-resident tag in 31 when there was only 2, and I kept telling them we'd already set a season, so we have to at least have 1 tag in there, and he was did not want to hear that. And but other than that, we passed it for all 3 of those hunts, or all 4 of them, I guess.
Mr. Castanelli?
Tom Castanelli, Humboldt County. We also agreed with department recommendations on all the California sheep hunts. I haven't been getting up here. I should have come up at the start. Anything I don't come up on, we agree with the department recommendation.
Am I allowed to talk now, Jeremy?
Yeah, let's just make sure county advisory boards. Actually, Tom, let me call you up when we get public comment wrapped up. But let's finish with the county advisory boards.
County Cab. We did discuss this, and we approved the department's recommendations in 066, 068 on both the U and the RAM.
Thank you. Additional county advisory boards? Okay. Public comment in Las Vegas on California hunts, ram hunts, and U hunts?
No comment from Las Vegas.
Okay. And Elko?
No comment in Elko.
And public comment in Reno?
Logan, Mel Belding, Washoe County. I think the quota of 10 California bighorns would be much better served to put into area 013, the trap and transplant. Because of lion predation in 013, confirmed, the department had to go in and collar some more ewes because we didn't have any collars left. Might have one left. 011, same story. We augmented that herd a couple, 3 years ago out of 031, and we're losing a lot of bighorn sheep in there also. So again, I think those animals, if they can be taken out of 068, which I kind of disagree that we probably have a little more in there if we got into the Black Mountains and put a few water developments. And we do have much better habitat this year, last year, than we've had in the past. And I'm gonna say that I think this is gonna be kind of a trend for a couple of years. So knocking these herds back because of what we think are gonna happen, and always using a 2.5 bighorn sheep per square mile of habitat, I think that's way low, and it should be revisited again. If there's been a change to that, then I'd like to know about it. But I would just like to see these ewes be taken to a place where they're badly needed. Thank you.
Okay, additional public comment, Reno, one more.
Sean Schaefer myself. Hey, I just was curious and directing it at you, Mike. I started looking back in A61 on that notebook we have. Very informative notebook, by the way. And I see 011 through 013, which is unit group, and I see that the number, the record, or not recommendation, but the population estimate that they figures in there. And I'm just curious, it's actually higher than some of the units that do have tags. And I just want to ask, is it because of the lack of mature rams at this point in there, and that's why we don't have any tag in there or not? Or what? I just wanted to get that on record. And then the second thing I had was, I had a couple sheep come in this year, taxidermy, and they had mentioned that they did not have to bring organs out or swab for nasal. It just seems to me that should be mandatory. I mean, that's just free information gathering. They bring it to the state. It just seems to me to be a smart thing to make that mandatory. And I just wanted to throw that out.
All right, so Mike, if you want to address the last question we got to, and then Tom, I'll ask.
Yeah, I mean, we still are waiting for the mature, to rams to mature a little bit older, and the Massacre ram and the Coleman ram releases that we did over the last 5 years. And we try not to burden our sportsmen too much, so we do pick and choose kind of which unit groups we're going to ask samples to be collected. And we're kind of looking at some of the data we collected in the past, and some of the tissue samples have come in less than stellar shape, and we may start focusing more on collecting the sinuses from the heads, which certainly Sean Shea and other taxidermists, we'd be coming directly to them when they make that cut on the skull plate. So we're rethinking the need for some of the samples and where, but we're certainly not going to be bashful to go ask if we need it to get it.
And then, Mr. Donham, you can come up, but in coming up, I guess my question, and it might be to you and Mike both, is given where we are on our fluctuating populations and other unit groups, do we have sufficient source stock outside of Unit 068 that will meet our foreseeable demands as far as ewes go for trap and transplant?
Yeah, if nothing changes, we're looking great in the Pine Forest and the Black Rock. So we're going to be, continuing to consider our translocation opportunities, but certainly with a concern about risk of contact. But depending on where they're at, we certainly don't want to put animals right next door to where they were captured and have them go home. But
Okay. Mr. Donham, welcome.
Tom Dunham, Nevada Department of Wildlife. I guess I would have felt remiss if I didn't come in here and talk about what Jeremy was looking at with his recommendation. The recommendation of 10 U tags is designed to keep him around the sustainable management level of 100 adult sheep in that unit that Mike referenced. The current population estimate's about 110 adults, and while knocking that quota down by 5, I don't think is going to have any huge impacts this year. We've had good rains and everything else. What would probably happen is it would just result in Jeremy needing to come in with an even higher quota next year in order to keep that herd at that sustainable management level. So, pay me now or pay me later. I don't think it's going to hurt anything to go down to 5 this year, but then we may be looking at a quota recommendation closer to 15 next year instead of maintaining the 10.
Okay, questions for Mr. Don? All right. Any additional questions or discussion by the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve resident California bighorn sheep any ram any legal weapon hunt 8151. Resident California bighorn sheep any ewe any legal weapon hunt 8181. And non-resident California bighorn sheep any ram any legal weapon hunt 8251 as proposed by the department. Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Commissioner McNinch, a second by Commissioner Hubbs to approve hunts 8151, 8181, and 8251 as presented by the department with no changes. Is there any question or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Was that you were yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
That takes us to page 9.
And we can take both our mountain ungulates to finish out. Our Rocky Mountain Bighorn mountain goats, hunt 9151, Rocky Mountain Bighorn and ram, and 7151, any goat, mountain goat resident hunts. No alternative recommendation.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, county advisory boards on hunts 9151 and 7151, which is Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep and mountain goats.
Sean Shea, Washington County. I know this isn't in Washington County, but we had a slight discussion on this. We approved both of them as written, but that we see that 114, that the success has been so bad, and where they tend to hang out. And I've been up there several times on this, and it just seems to me is like next year is maybe moving that hunt later to pull them out of those canyons and those heavy trees that those sheep are sitting in. Just to fall in it right across the highway, you got a unit that's open like December 20th or February 20th, and it's just across the highway from it. So just a thought to at least try to meet these harvest objectives.
Ray Sawyer, White Pine County. We did discuss the 114 issue with the biologist there in Ely, and his intent is to split that hunt next year, make 2 hunts out of it, and try to get them sheep where we can actually maybe kill some that are not in that nasty country.
So you support the recommendation?
Correct. I apologize. We do support the 4 tags.
Okay. Additional county advisory board input?
Kern Winder Cab on the hunt 7151. We supported all the recommendations.
Additional county advisory board input? Seeing none, public comment in Las Vegas for Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep or mountain goat hunts?
No comment in Las Vegas.
Thank you. And Elko?
No comment in Elko.
And Reno, public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. If there's no further discussion or questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the
Hold on just a second. Commissioner Hubbs, did you have a question?
I just had a question because it seems like the data says from 2009 to 2016 the population been on a decrease to about 38%. And am I reading that wrong? Because our quotas are going up.
Mike?
Yeah, we've had a decline over since the disease event for goats and Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep. Of course, the populations were a lot higher. We, before that time, and that is taking all the herds together. But if you were to dissect out each herd, there's a little bit of a dichotomy and a different direction some of the herds are going. And the herds that are going south, declining, we pulled them. The Badlands 074, 091, although it'll have one more tag for Utah, that may be it for a long time. And we still don't have a hunt in 101 or 102. So, in particular, the north end of the Snake Range, what we call Mount Moriah, Unit 114, population in there is doing well. We have mature rams in there, and so that's why we're looking for an increase in tags there. They are there. We're just having a hard time getting the hunters to get into them. The mountain goats, and this is not atypical, after a disease event hits, we're going to be ultra conservative on what we lost until we gather more information. And sometimes it takes 2 to 3 years, even 5 years, to multiple surveys, different times of year, reports from guides and hunters, and we definitely overestimated the losses of our mountain goats, both East Humboldts and Newbies. And the age structure, coming back from the harvest, information from the guides, so we support that there was probably more mountain goats that survived, and in fact we probably had a 30% loss of adults estimated, and from the 09-10 die-off, and now we think it was only 15%. And so that's why that slight increase, in particular in the rubies, Unit 102.
Additional questions? Okay. Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
You're prepared to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resident Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep and ram any illegal weapon hunt 9151 as presented, as well as the resident mountain goat, any legal hunt 71 as presented.
Second. Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Johnston, a second by Commissioner Wallace to approve hunts 9151 and 7151 as presented by the department without change. Is there any discussion or question on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously with our 3 absent commissioners. And I can tell you that the guy in the middle of the table needs a break. We did it yesterday in 45 minutes, and I appreciate that. It was a little bit tight. So let's take a full hour for lunch today and come back at 1:30.